Hi, I'm Greg Gutfeld with Charlie Hurt. That's true. Marie Harp, Jesse Waters, and she can log roll on a crayon. Dana Perino, the 5. The world must be ending, meaning it's Tuesday on cable news.
It's just as serious to me as the Cuban Missile Crisis in terms of an attack or the 9/11 attack. I would say that his performance today will live in infamy as much as the Pearl Harbor attack or Kristallnacht.
Curious point in American government. When do we see almost a shadow government come out and say, we cannot side with the government, whether it's the cabinet or the Senate?
Amazing. CNN is literally seeing shadows now. I think there's medication for that. Now, Trump addressed the controversy today, and we're going to get to that. But if he's a Russian plant, he's the worst one ever. I mean, what kind of plant would try to force Germany to cancel its Russian oil contracts? Oil being Russia's only major export besides spies. What kind of plant would demand that NATO up their military spending to straitjacket Mad Vlad? What kind of plant boosts our military by billions, which allows us to do whatever the hell we want until forever? I say an awesome plant. Seriously, you got to be nuts if you think he's the Manchurian candidate. John Brennan does, and he voted for a commie at the height of the Cold War. I guess he's the expert. Maybe Trump should have talked tough but sent a few $1 billion to Moscow on pallets instead. So Donald lost the crazy pants vote. So what? The world is Donkey Kong, and we're always stuck at the same level, especially with Russia. But perhaps, like North Korea, this could be different. Putin's a thug, but you can still chat with a thug while racking up points in his own backyard. Trump played nice, maybe too nice, despite the media screeching for a catfight. But I say smile in Putin's face, then screw him if you must everywhere else. Maybe Trump should have skipped the presser altogether. But ask yourself this. If your TV was off, and you never heard about this story, would you have noticed anything different in your life? Just that it was gradually getting better? Terror, jobs, Trump's winning on a lot of things. Taxes, terror. Trump's winning on a lot of things. But even if you're winning, you could always do better. All right, let's go to the news. By the way, a meaningful monologue.
One of the best.
Thank you.
But you say that every single monologue.
I do.
In the break before he goes, hey, Charlie, you're going to love my monologue. It was good.
We got to talk about Trump's clarification today on the fact that he misspoke.
Faith and support for America's great intelligence agencies, always had. And I have felt very strongly that while Russia's actions had no impact at all on the outcome of the election, let me be totally clear in saying that, and I've said this many times, I accept our intelligence community's conclusion that Russia's meddling in the 2016 election took place. Could be other people also. In a key sentence in my remarks, I said the word would instead of wouldn't. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't, or why it wouldn't be Russia.
All right, so Dana, I'm reminded of myself. I had 3 older sisters when I was forced to apologize to my sisters in order so I could come.
There? Did your mom write it for you?
Yes, exactly. I'm still a little confused by the clarification. Like, is this
it's
a genius?
It's one of those clarifications that if you said would or would not, you would want to clarify it within 24 minutes.
Right.
Well, not 24 hours. Mm-hmm. I do respect that he understood that he had to clarify. Mm-hmm. He decided to do that. He read from a written statement, didn't take questions, so there was nothing off script except for the added, but there could have been other people also, which basically negated most of what he was saying. But I think one of the most important things he did is he recognized that he had a problem with the intelligence community, and it's critical for any commander-in-chief to have a good relationship with them because you have to rely on them because your responsibility is to protect the American people, and you can't do that if you don't have intel and a good relationship with them. So I think that's what he was trying to do. Words do matter. They have consequences. Being nice is fine, but I also think that in this case, to your point about the deeds, he does the right things and says the wrong things.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Is it better then to say all the right things, but to do the wrong things? But you could have both.
You could have both. That is true.
Both. If you're doing good things, You should be able to say the good thing.
Dana, I disagree. You can only have two choices. Or my theory falls flat. Jesse, what did you make of the clarification?
It's a gaffe, if you believe the explanation that he misspoke, which is historic. He's never admitted he's made a mistake or misspoke, ever. So I think this is pretty significant. But if you don't believe it and you believe he really meant to say it, then you think it's just kind of a sloppy or a little slick cleanup. Maybe he could have cleaned it up like I'd suggested on Tucker or Hannity. He had to wait a little long, but he definitely looked upset. I just want to talk about the montage and the monologue for a little bit. There's always a constant in Washington. Republicans will always underdeliver. And Democrats will always overreach. Because this is what they did here. He makes a gaffe at a summit, and now the left is calling for a coup.
Yeah.
We heard this before, though. You remember, we've seen the Access Hollywood tape, Charlottesville, firing James Comey, the Khan family controversy, separating kids, and Stormy Daniels. All of these things, they've all said it's the Holocaust. It's another 9/11. It's a constitutional crisis. Impeachment. Internment camps. But I think the country is tuning this out. We've become numb to this type of hyperbole because the Democrats always overreach. Now they want to abolish ICE. Now they're chasing people out of restaurants and they're fantasizing about assassinations. It always ends up coming back, boomeranging them and hurting them politically. And I think this is going to be the same thing.
Marie, do you think it's true that part of the problem is it's the boy who cried wolf, but it's the boy who cried collusion, the boy who cried impeachment? So when it happens, even, it's just like, not this again, because I know next week, there's going to be something that makes this look small, right?
I can't even imagine what that would be, and that sort of makes my head hurt.
We should try to guess.
I don't even want to try to guess. I do think that Democrats need to be careful not to cry a crisis over everything, because what we saw yesterday was genuinely appalling. And when you are asked, do I side with the intelligence community or Putin? That is not a hard answer. That doesn't require clarification. There is one answer, and the president didn't give it. And my question continues to be, why not? Why will the president not say that Russia did it unequivocally? He didn't even do that today. Does he not believe it? And there's a whole host of reasons we can look at. It ends with collusion, but there's a bunch of things before that, right? Is it ego? Is it he's afraid that he will look like an illegitimate president? But the bottom line is, Dan Coats, the head of national intelligence, last week said publicly, the warning signs about Russian interference today in our upcoming election is like the blinking red lights we saw before 9/11.
Too bad Obama didn't feel that way.
Wait, this isn't about Barack Obama. This is about Donald Trump.
Kinda.
It's not.
It happened
though,
under
Greg.
his watch, Marie. How dare you?
Donald Trump is president today, and his intelligence chief said this is like what we saw before 9/11 in terms of a threat. And Donald Trump, by not standing up to Russia yesterday or today, is not countering that threat, and that should be a problem to all Americans.
See, I would disagree with Coates on this, mainly because the difference between radical Islam and threats like Russia is existential. Radical Islam wants to destroy the world. Russia is just another power.
Well, they're trying to undermine our democracy, which is just as bad.
And also,
probably.
one it manages to kill lots of innocent people on a routine basis. The other is inexcusable, but and should be combated, but is not killing thousands of innocent women and children, every year. Clearly, the president made a mistake yesterday in his in that performance, but it was just a performance. The mistake he made was he conflated the whole business about the hacking into the DNC servers and this business about collusion. And that's when you're president of the United States, you cannot do that, especially if you're standing next to a thug like Vladimir Putin. But on the flip, I get a little bit kind of, sort of hesitant about all of this incredible outrage about all of it, because, of course, that's exactly what the press does every day, and they have done for the past 2 years, conflate Russian meddling with collusion. And they say that, we have proof of Russian meddling, therefore you colluded. And he's a defensive guy. He's always going to punch back, and he's just defensive. But he's a bigger guy than that. He needs to ignore that stuff. People don't listen to the lunatics who are talking about collusion now. He doesn't need to answer that question. Just say that Russia meddled with our elections, knock it off, whatever, and then move on.
Yeah. I think we have time. I want to play this other shot of Donald Trump talking about the relationship with Russia that he was hoping to have.
The matters we discussed are profound in their importance and have the potential to save millions of lives. I understand the many disagreements between our countries, but I also understand that dialogue and the When you think about a dialogue with Russia or dialogue with other countries, but dialogue with Russia in this case, where we've had such poor relationships for so many years, dialogue is a very important thing and it's a very good thing. So if we get along with them, great. If we don't get along with them, then we won't get along with them. But I think we have a very good chance of having some very positive things.
So, Dana, this is why I'm not surprised or shocked about what's been happening, is because he was saying the same thing during the campaign about Russia all the time. And he sounds very liberal, by the way. This is a traditional liberal position, dialogue with Russia, the USSR.
Yeah, as Jesse pointed out, I mean, every president, we'll just go to, as Brett Baer said today, every president since Eisenhower has been trying to have good relations with Russia, and it never works out. So to me, that points out that there's a common denominator here. It's not our fault. Yeah. It's their actions, and I think that was another thing that he probably could have done, is to say, like, I'm not blaming the United States for this. This is his fault. But again, I go back to the deeds. I think it'll be interesting to see if anything happens on Crimea, sanctions, or Syria.
Iran.
I actually think in some ways, Putin may have thought that he won yesterday, but at the end of today, I think that Putin's in a much weaker position.
So you're saying Trump is a genius?
And this was all planned.
It was all planned. This was like 4-level chess.
Yes, you see? Underwater.
Underwater.
But the president does do this thing where he throws these flashbang grenades. And you know what nobody's talking about right now? How terrible Brett Kavanaugh is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is he terrible?
That's what I
get your point.
On the Gutfeld show.
All right, cool. All right, we got to move. Anybody else want to say anything?
Good.
How great Jesse's hair looks?
Fantastic.
It does.
I need a cut, though.
I know.
What about the new hairdo?
Yeah.
We're working on it. We're in a transitional phase.
All right. Okay. Barack Obama returns to the spotlight to go after President Trump. His latest insults next.
Donald Trump gets a lot more than 14. What do you?
Probably all the stadium could hold.
That's probably around the block. People were ready. Couldn't let him in. It was a fire hazard. What do you think of this, especially the racial angle that he unveiled there?
Well, I love Africa. I have a strong passion for helping people there. My husband and I spent time in South Africa, where he is there. The sad truth is that right now, South Africa is one of the most dangerous places that you can be. The law and order problems are immense. Tourism is down. And you actually have problems all throughout Africa from a governance standpoint. And so that, I think, is someplace where somebody like President Obama could actually really help. Shots against what's happening here, okay, fine, I can sort of get it, but President Trump is the president now. You can have your opinion about it, but if you really want to help, and Africa needs help, some guidance and mentorship from Barack Obama to leaders that are there now would be very helpful.
He was probably getting a lot of pressure from some of his friends and former colleagues. Speak out, speak out. You got to speak out.
Yeah.
Isn't you just made me think, there is a racist leader in South Africa right now who's vowing to kill white people. And I don't know if you could Google it, but I don't know the person's name. But that's happening right now. Maybe he brought that up during that speech and condemned that person, and I didn't hear it because I only get the stuff that the producers give me. But I will tell you this. The one thing that I thought was spurious, a word I don't use lightly, his comment about free speech. That's absurd. The press has never been more vocal than under Donald Trump. He is the best thing to happen to the press since the printing press. Seriously. And when you compare that to the media under Obama, and I've said it before, the media was as pliant as a drugged patient. I mean, they were, and he didn't seem to mind. He didn't seem to mind, except he got very petty about certain journalists enough to investigate them. Ooh. So, I mean, the fact is he had every network but one. And still that wasn't enough. Nope, 99.9%, not enough. But I know you probably think Barack Obama is right.
You've been reading my notes. Well, first of all, to what Dana said, something else Barack Obama is doing during this trip is doing a series of sessions for young and up-and-coming leaders in Africa. He has an initiative that's working with them. I think that's great. And I know you think everything's about Donald Trump, Jesse, but I think that President Obama was talking about Trump, but also about a phenomenon we're seeing around the world. In Hungary with Orban, in Turkey with Erdogan, in Russia with Putin. There's a global phenomenon of strong men autocratic-leaning leaders that are undermining institutions across the globe. It's not all about Donald Trump, man.
I think maybe.
And you know what, Jesse?
Okay, go ahead.
He's right. This is a totally valid criticism, and he has been very careful not to use President Trump's name directly. He's been very quiet when, quite frankly, when a lot of Democrats want him to be much more vocal, he actually hasn't been. So. You know what? It's okay.
President Bush went through this as well, where during the Obama administration, there was a lot of pressure and a request for him, like, why isn't he speaking out? Why isn't he doing more? And presidents get to make.
But he never did that. He was classy.
Rarely.
He was classy through to the very end.
The only time I think that there was, feeling like he should was really when President Obama had started the idea of going after those CIA interrogators, and he was going to prosecute them, and that didn't end up happening. But he could work behind the scenes.
I mean, maybe he was talking about Angela Merkel, because she regretted her immigration stance when she let all the migrants flood into her country, and she's under a lot of pressure over there too. It's not just if you want immigration controls and sovereignty, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a racist.
No, I found that to be the most appalling part of all of his comments there. But you remember the thing that Obama used to talk about when he first in 2008. He would talk about how Republicans had wrecked the economy, which is the car, and now they were standing around on the side of the road with a Slurpee, and they're asking for the keys back because they want to get the car and try to back it out of the ditch that they.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Barack Obama has done. He's the one standing on the side of the road with the Slurpee. By this speech like this, he thinks that his opinions still matter, and he wants the keys back. And people are like, no, you're not going to get the keys back.
We're talking about it. It must matter to someone.
Well, thing, he also did that thing where he gave a list of things. It's like it's like when you have to make a list of something to bolster your point, it means that most of the complaints are actually pretty weak.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I think he's probably a little upset that his legacy has been throttled the way it has been, Dana, by Donald Trump. When you look at domestic policy, the Obamacare mandate and the taxes and then foreign policy with the Iran deal.
I would say there was three main things. Obviously, there's the foreign policy walkbacks that the president has done, but also from a tax policy standpoint, absolutely. Regulatory policy, President Obama tried so hard to ram a lot of things through in those last several months, and because there is this maneuver that you can use in Congress to turn those back, that's really unleashed the economy, and it doesn't get enough attention. But the other thing is the judiciary, because they think that they have now 30 circuit court judges confirmed. I mean, now in a second Supreme Court justice, that's remarkable.
All right. Also remarkable, your notes.
Barack
Obama is right.
Thank you for repeating it, Jesse.
All right, I'm going to cross that out and say wrong. There we go. The new socialist superstar with a major political blunder. We'll tell you what it is up next.
A socialist stumble. Political newcomer Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is already making a major political gaffe with this eyebrow-raising comment on Israel and Palestine.
I also think that what people are starting to see, at least in the occupation of Palestine, is just an increasing crisis of humanitarian condition. And that, to me, is just where I tend to come from on this issue.
You use the term the occupation of Palestine. What did you mean by that?
I think what I meant is like the settlements that are increasing in some of these areas.
Do you think you can expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd also I am not the expert on geopolitics on this issue.
All right, Marie, what do you think?
Well, she's clearly not the expert on this issue. She's right about that. But it is also true that the humanitarian situation in Gaza and the West Bank is horrific.
Oh, no, I wasn't talking about the substance. I just meant her.
We're not doing substance here.
Okay, well, then I'll move on to the substance. She's not entirely wrong on the substance. She did not look prepared for that interview, and she is young, which I think is a plus politically often today, particularly in this midterms. But if you're young, you cannot look unprepared. And she looked caught off guard and sort of meandered her way through an answer.
And she needs to do all these interviews, Charlie. I mean, she's she's going
She's a rock star.
go ahead and win
Yes.
your district, and then you'll see.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing you don't have to be an expert on these things. She went to college. I think she even had some sort of international relations degree. It's just stunning to me that you can go through, get an education, and be this deeply, profoundly ignorant on whether it's Palestine, the situation there, which I would disagree somewhat with.
It's a humanitarian crisis?
No, I don't
is.
disagree with that, but the idea that you would call them call it occupied
Well, the U.S. government
is astonishing to me because and there was a time where that sort of sentiment would have been branded as anti-Semitic, but not anymore. But also her embrace of socialism is I find just staggering.
Well, we have a soundbite from that, and there's another piece where she's talking about capitalism. Watch.
I do think that right now, when we have this no-holds-barred, Wild West hyper-capitalism, what that means is profit at any cost. Capitalism has not always existed in the world, and it will not always exist in the world. When this country started, we were not a capitalist. We did not operate on a capitalist economy.
Greg, my dad used to say, why not run for president now while you still know everything? He might still say that about me, but she's not alone in her thinking. I mean, there's a lot of young people on the left that think the way she does.
Yeah, it's sad. Kudos to Margaret Hoover.
Yep.
I thought that the follow-up question was very good. She did it nicely. It was like, excuse me, could you say something more idiotic? and then she did. And I guess it shows what happens when you get far in life parroting bumper sticker slogans. And then finally somebody asks you to explain the bumper sticker that you're trying to pass off as an actual deep thought. And what you have is, you don't even have a bumper. There's no car there. So this is, you often see this too on campus when they do campus interviews. They go up to a leftist and they actually ask them to explain themselves and they just fall apart. The press loves this when Sacha Baron Cohen does it to Sarah Palin. But they don't love this stuff because they actually believe this crap.
That's true.
I will say she is charming.
Yeah, I mean, if this had happened to someone like a Palin, it would have been on every single news station.
Like every day.
Like Palin made a misstatement? I don't remember that.
She was running for vice president. That's a little different than a congressional seat in the Bronx.
I know, but this woman is
She will be
crowned
your
the
vice
socialist
president.
queen, and she's being protected, and she will be protected as she rises, because she's going to be a prolific fundraiser, and she's going to be wanted at every speaking engagement, and that's fine. But I think Margaret Hoover, who did a great job there, she was sent by the D.C. establishment to captive her. And to like cut her down to size a little bit, because I know and I've heard that people don't like her at the top levels of the Democratic Party because she's taking a lot of attention. She's moving the party far left with this abolish ICE nonsense.
Where did you hear that from?
I hear things. I do talk
He
to
has a
Democrats.
lot of Democratic sources.
Yes,
apparently.
you and Juan.
But it is true that, you know, this has been coming for a long time. The crack up that happened in the Republican Party that made things so difficult with the Tea Party and stuff, all of that has just been waiting to happen to the Democratic Party, and it's happening.
Well,
it's starting now.
I think, look, I talked to a lot of candidates in the Midwest and the South who are actually quite moderate and who are what we used to call blue dogs. So I think there's a debate inside the party. In the midterms, it won't matter as much because we're running candidates that match their districts. In 2020, it will matter. And I think someone like this young woman has a bright future if she applies herself correctly and takes a deep breath, wins her race first, and becomes a productive member of the caucus.
You can
because
fudge
right now,
better than
she's
that, though,
not.
to say, oh, I don't know that much about politics. I mean, that's any idiot can say that. You should be able to, like, kind of wing it a little
Well,
bit
that
better.
wasn't great. I would also point out that the U.S. government calls the Palestinian territories occupied, so it's not anti-Semitic to say that.
Maybe
if
the
US
Obama
government
administration.
The media is going to love her. If they don't, well, they love her already. She's Bernie Sanders without the scent of Ben Gay. So she's got all the ideologies there, and she's in a younger.
I think she's further left than Bernie, to be honest.
She might be.
with you.
She might be.
She might be, but she also raises some. Look, I don't agree with her economic policies. We do still have a problem in this country with wage stagnation and with the growing inequality between rich and poor.
Yeah, but
and
I have to say, wage stagnation, like that argument doesn't sound as good as a no-holds-barred Wild West hyper-capitalism. That's much more quotable.
That sounds exciting, though. I like that.
I like hyper-capitalism.
Wild West capitalism.
It's like
If
an
you're at the
amusement park
top of it,
ride
it's good.
in free market
Well,
land.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's not the only Democrat pushing socialist ideas. You would not believe what Chicago is considering. Up next.
I'm gonna be the first one calling you baby. If he ain't holding you tight, if he ain't treating you right, I'm gonna be the first one calling
So, how does free cash with no questions asked sound to you? Some residents of Chicago could soon find out. A member of the city council is proposing universal basic income legislation that would give a $500 monthly stipend to 1,000 families. It's an idea that Barack Obama backed today during his speech in South Africa. So, Marie, I have to ask.
I knew this was coming to you.
It has to go
I could
to you.
feel it.
She already has her talking point.
No, that wasn't on this.
Barack Obama is right. So what?
It works for every topic.
Tell me I'm wrong, because I'd love to be told that I'm wrong about this. But why there's an alarming number of people in the Democratic Party who think socialism is great and have no problem with it? What's going on? What's wrong here?
So I think when you or other people use the term socialism, it's an easy way to get out of the conversation about how to make sure that there are people in the lower middle classes that are able to make more money to better afford college or healthcare.
Typical socialist.
No, but by saying socialist, that almost shuts down the argument, right? We have a problem with inequality in our country. The richer are getting much richer. The poorer and the middle class have stagnated or gone down. That's a problem, Charlie. I'm not saying this solution is the solution in Chicago, and I'm not saying the Democrats do themselves any favors when they talk about socialism, but we need to think about how, as a country, we can do better on this. On this wage inequality, because it's a real problem.
Because, I mean, even that kind of makes the point. Part of the problem with socialism is it just doesn't work. And so closing that, getting people to have a living wage, and of course I want that too. I want people to work. I want people to feel gainfully employed. Yeah. But getting there, you don't get there through socialism. You wind up killing a bunch of people. We've had, 100 million people die under communism. But the
social safety net in this country has also brought people out of poverty and helped.
There's a difference between a social safety net, and we could even debate that.
And socialism.
And socialism.
Yes, I'm arguing Democrats want more of a social safety net.
Only because I think that getting something for free without having to earn it hurts the person, the individual. Charity is a responsibility, and you have to do it wisely so that you don't destroy the person that you're trying to help. But Dana, my question to you is, so I don't know how socialism, I don't know how anybody makes the argument in favor of socialism, yet somehow Republicans and conservatives still manage to lose this argument with people. How is that? And what are they doing? What are we doing wrong?
I think,
when have we lost the argument on socialism?
Yeah.
Well, we're often portrayed as cruel.
The fact that you have huge portions of the Democratic Party espousing a lot of this stuff, the fact that Bernie Sanders, a socialist, whatever, socialist Democrat, whatever, communist.
He's not a Democrat.
He's the fact that he should have won the nomination last time, that's scary material.
Yeah, it's scary, but he would have lost the general, and that's fine. Let him go off the left-wing cliff.
This was.
Well, all I would say is that this idea is, they don't call it socialism. They call it a universal base income. And the idea here in Chicago is a pilot program where people would get $500. And this would allow you to help meet your basic needs. The question, though, is is that necessary? Does that mean that if you're on a welfare program, does that mean you don't need the welfare program anymore? Are we reducing that? The other thing is, Republicans last week tried something that didn't get a lot of attention, but their new line is that the war on poverty is over. We have won it. Ooh. And I'm surprised
that it
doesn't have.
There's a lot of people who would disagree.
There's a lot of people who might disagree, but there's a lot to be said. That there's a lot on the table right now economically that looks very good. Can we keep it going through the means of capitalism? But you're going to see a lot more of this UBI stuff.
So, Greg, would you be satisfied with $500 stipend every month?
That's
what
about
would you have to give up?
3 cans of beans a day and some cheap Mad Dog wine. I'm good. I'm good. Send it to me. But you are right. There is it's the untold story of the last, I'd say, 10, 20 years, that the dramatic reductions in worldwide poverty are unbelievable. And even the average calorie intake in Africa, which was always the place where there was really starvation, is up to like 2,500 calories a day, which is pretty good. Okay, we beat the world in terms of economic systems, yet we have this tendency to adopt the practices of the losers.
Right.
And I do think that has to do with some guilt and an ability of the opposing side to portray us as cruel and greedy, when in fact, a free market is probably the most selfless thing you could ever offer somebody, and it's nuts. I do think there is an ominous challenge coming up with automation and robotics. You could see tens, perhaps 100 million people unemployed or more because of automation. What do you do with those? What do those people do? And if they don't have, The only job, if your job isn't purely social, you won't have a job.
I'm just shocked that in a city like Chicago with Barack Obama and Rahm Emanuel, run by Democrats for decades, there's so many poor people that can't get by. It astounds me, Charlie. It astounds me.
Me too.
I think he's being sarcastic.
Yeah,
It's working.
So, batter up. Juan Williams joins us live on the field's National Park.
Oh, there he is.
All-access look at tonight's MLB All-Star Game if it doesn't get rained out.
Bag it up. I like the way you work it. No diggity. I got the bag it up. I like the way you work it. No diggity. I got to bag it up.
If there's one thing we all know about Juan Williams, it's that he's a diehard sports fan. The Washington Nationals are one of his true loves, next to his wife and kids, of course. So we decided to ship him back to D.C. for a behind-the-scenes look at tonight's Major League Baseball All-Star Game at Nationals Park. Juan, you must feel like a kid in a candy store there.
Marie, you got it right. I'm sort of ecstatic. You know, it's like that John Fogerty song, The Sun Came Out, put me in, coach, I'm ready to play. I'm on the field at Nationals Park. You got to tell Greg, I ran into some San Francisco Giants, Brandon Crawford. Bud Black of the Colorado Rockies just came over to say hello. He's a 5 fan, folks. So
I know
lots
his
of
record
people
very well.
here. No kidding. Oh, look at that. And, you know, it's just been an extraordinary time. Last night they had the home run derby. You got to tell Jesse that Rhys Hopkins of the Phillies put on a show. But
Well,
of course,
Bryce Harper
Washington
was the winner,
National,
wasn't he? Didn't Bryce Harper win
yeah,
it?
Bryce. He came back at the end in spectacular fashion and had this place rocking. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan. I'm a season ticket holder. I haven't seen Nationals Park rock like that before. It was spectacular.
Well, Juan, I'm so glad that you weren't here yesterday and today because you would have just been screaming about Trump. And we had some fill-ins that weren't as angry, and it was really nice that you were down there. But you look great.
Well,
I think you should put your collar up, too.
Oh, I should flip it up like a Jesse Waters thing?
There it is.
I don't know if it'll work. I'm trying, man. I'm trying to be as hip as Jesse, but Jesse, you're the younger generation. And by the way, yesterday I got to talk with the players, and Jesse, they're younger than you. It's
Really?
unbelievable.
Younger than 40.
Yeah, I mean,
Imagine
yeah,
that.
well, they're all in their 20s, you know.
I've got a question. Juan, I have a question. How did Washington, D.C. land this opportunity to be the venue for this All-Star Game?
Well, this is an interesting question, Dana, because the learners who own the team have been asking for some time, and they finally got it. But the problem, and this is so interesting, it's just like logistics and TV, they couldn't get the convention center. And they needed the convention center. They have a huge exhibit over there, old-timers, Hall of Famers, you know, meet and greet sessions for fans, and they got it this year, and so it came in. But this is a brand new ballpark, I would say now about 5 years old, and so they've been angling to try to get it, and boy, has the town responded. Everything from the Library of Congress to the Congress itself, all really putting on the show for Major League Baseball.
Hey, Juan, after the rain, the field looks soggier than a truck driver's underpants. I was curious, can you drink at the field?
Yeah, can you drink?
Yeah. Can you drink it there? Or is it a dry, I don't know, I've never been there.
Juan's drunk right now.
Well, you know, so here's the thing. So Deb Cody, who's the producer from The Five, is with me. We got caught in the Nationals dugout, and all of a sudden it flooded, Greg.
Yeah.
It flooded. I mean, we couldn't get out. And so they had to put chairs down like a bridge so that we could walk out.
Wow.
It was hilarious. But they had pumps. They brought out pumps, and they looked like, you know, stricken with fear that something was going to interfere with the game. The players are just coming out now for batting practice. But it worked. They drank it up.
Wow.
Hey, Juan, Charlie Hurt here. How are you?
Hey, Charlie. I know you're a Nats fan, Charlie.
Yeah, so the number of times that I've run into you in that very park, it's kind of amazing. But I have to say I'm rather jealous, but I won't hold that against you right now. The real question that I want to know is, after last night's amazing performance by Bryce Harper, and I mean the dramatics of his, that sort of come from behind in the last final 15, 20 seconds was pretty astonishing. Is this going to turn the season around for Bryce Harper?
Well, there's so many questions around Harper. So I was telling you guys that, you know, yesterday I got to talk to all the players, and, you know, the biggest crowds were around two players, Manny Machado of the Baltimore Orioles, and again, he's on the trade block because I think the Orioles can't afford him, And then the other one was Bryce Harper. And the question is, does Bryce Harper stay in Washington after this season? He's not having a great season average-wise. He's hitting the home runs. And then the question becomes, well, is that worth $400 million, Charlie? I don't know. They've got some other people coming up. But I got to tell you, after last night, it's clear Bryce Harper owns this town. And his face, he's like the franchise player. Ryan Zimmerman has been the franchise player here for years. Bryce Harper is clearly the face of the Washington Nationals. And the question is that worth something in and of itself, even if his average is below average at the moment?
So, Juan, last question here. Who's going to win tonight? The American League or the National League? Put your money on it.
Well, you know, I'm a National League guy. I grew up as a Mets fan in Brooklyn. Now I'm a Nationals fan. In between, I rooted for the Orioles when Washington didn't have a team.
Right.
But the track record's pretty clear, Dana. The American League wins for, I think, 4 of the last 5, if not all of the last 5 times. We got Max Scherzer out here, you know, and Chris Sale of the Red Sox starting. Those are 2 great pitchers, but it really comes down to the back end. Then we'll see who wins. But if you had to pick, Dana, put your money on the AL.
All right, got it.
Okay, Juan, we will be watching tonight. Have fun. Stay tuned because one more thing is up next.
So rock me, mama, like a wagon wheel. Rock me, mama, any way you feel. Hey, mama, rock me.
If there's one thing we all know about Juan Williams, it's that he's a diehard sports fan. The Washington Nationals are one of his true loves, next to his wife and kids, of course. So we decided to ship him back to D.C. for a behind-the-scenes look at tonight's Major League Baseball All-Star Game at Nationals Park. Juan, you must feel like a kid in a candy store there.
Marie, you got it right. I'm sort of ecstatic. You know, it's like that John Fogerty song, The Sun Came Out, Put Me in, Coach, I'm ready to play. I'm on the field at Nationals Park. You got to tell Greg, I ran into some San Francisco Giants, Brandon Crawford. Bud Black of the Colorado Rockies just came over to say hello. He's a 5 fan, folks. So
I know
lots
his
of
record
people
very well.
here. No kidding. Oh, look at that. And, you know, it's just been an extraordinary time. Last night they had the home run derby. You got to tell Jesse that Rhys Hopkins of the Phillies put on a show. But
Well,
of course,
Bryce Harper
Washington
was the winner,
National,
wasn't he? Didn't Bryce Harper win
yeah,
it?
Bryce. He came back at the end in spectacular fashion and had this place rocking. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan. I'm a season ticket holder. I haven't seen Nationals Park rock like that before. It was spectacular.
Well, Juan, I'm so glad that you weren't here yesterday and today because you would have just been screaming about Trump. And we had some fill-ins that weren't as angry, and it was really nice that you were down there. But you look great.
Well,
I think you should put your collar up, too.
Oh, I should flip it up like a Jesse Waters thing?
There it is.
I don't know if it'll work. I'm trying, man. I'm trying to be as hip as Jesse, but Jesse, you're the younger generation. And by the way, yesterday I got to talk with the players, and Jesse, they're younger than you. It's
Really?
unbelievable.
Younger than 40.
Yeah, I mean,
Imagine
yeah,
that.
well, they're all in their 20s, you know.
I've got a question. Juan, I have a question. How did Washington, D.C. land this opportunity to be the venue for this All-Star game?
Well, this is an interesting question, Dana, because the learners who own the team have been asking for some time, and they finally got it. But the problem, and this is so interesting, it's just like logistics and TV, they couldn't get the convention center. And they needed the convention center. They have a huge exhibit over there, old-timers, Hall of Famers, you know, meet and greet sessions for fans, and they got it this year, and so it came in. But this is a brand new ballpark, I would say now about 5 years old, and so they've been angling to try to get it, and boy, has the town responded. Everything from the Library of Congress to the Congress itself, all really putting on the show for Major League Baseball.
Hey, Juan, after the rain, the field looks soggier than a truck driver's underpants. I was curious, can you drink at the field?
Yeah, can you drink?
Yeah. Can you drink it there? Or is it a dry, I don't know, I've never been there.
Juan's drunk right now.
Well, you know, so here's the thing. So Deb Cody, who's the producer from The Five, is with me. We got caught in the Nationals dugout, and all of a sudden it flooded, Greg.
Yeah.
It flooded. I mean, we couldn't get out. And so they had to put chairs down like a bridge so that we could walk out.
Wow.
It was hilarious. But they had pumps. They brought out pumps, and they looked like, you know, stricken with fear that there's something was going to interfere with the game. The players are just coming out now for batting practice, but it worked. They drank it up.
Wow.
Hey, Juan, Charlie Hurt here. How are you?
Hey, Charlie. I know you're a Nats fan, Charlie.
Yeah, so the number of times that I've run into you in that very park, it's kind of amazing. But I have to say I'm rather jealous, but I won't hold that against you right now. The real question that I want to know is, after last night's amazing performance by Bryce Harper, and I mean the dramatics of that sort of come from behind in the last final 15, 20 seconds was pretty astonishing. Is this going to turn the season around for Bryce Harper?
Well, there's so many questions around Harper. So I was telling you guys that, yesterday I got to talk to all the players, and, the biggest crowds were around two players, Manny Machado of the Baltimore Orioles, and again, he's on the trade block because I think the Orioles can't afford him. And then the other one was Bryce Harper. And the question is, does Bryce Harper stay in Washington after this season? He's not having a great season. Average